Okay, I have with me here today Dr. Jonathan Moore, friend of the channel. He's been interviewed before. He's been on a live stream before. Um, Jonathan has a lot of experience in medico legal matters. Of course, he's a doctor as well. So thanks for joining us, Jonathan. We're going to do something a little bit different today, but I'd just say hello to you first.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. It's a great pleasure.
That's no problem. So this was your suggestion, actually, and I thought it was an excellent idea. So isn't going to be a typical interview. We're going to discuss the last 2.5 years of the, if you want to call it a campaign, if you want to call it kind of growing public awareness of the egregious nature of Lucy Letby's conviction and the people we want to kind of celebrate and acknowledge some of the unsung heroes in that process. And just kind of contextualize the whole thing for viewers, and hopefully provide some thoughtful commentary on it. But before we do that, I'm just going to begin by asking Jonathan. We're sitting here in August 2026. It's actually just over 2 years since the New Yorker article came out, and the first articles from the Guardian and the Daily Telegraph. So we were talking before we started recording about how much has been achieved in a relatively short period of time. So we're going to discuss that further, but how do you feel about things at this point in time?
Well, that's why I'm so keen to do this, because we have achieved an astonishing amount in such a short space of time. Most miscarriages of justice take 3, 4, 5 years even just to get any momentum at all. And what is so incredible about Lucy Letby is just how quickly we got the momentum started. Particularly when you think we had that whole year where we couldn't speak because of the second trial. There was a significant period where literally we weren't able to discuss it at all. And during that time, I did manage to get quite a lot of information from various sources, and I was able to spend that time very, very well. But really, it's only been 2 years, and I just want to celebrate just how much we've achieved, and just to reflect, because it's very easy to forget now how incredibly difficult it appeared at the start. I mean, I remember, for me, I think it was the 18th of August 2023 that she was actually convicted. And between then and the bank holiday weekend of August, which is about 2 weeks later, by that stage, I had serious, serious doubts. And I remember that weekend, on the bank holiday Monday, I went for a walk in a beautiful part of the Cotswolds. I live in the Cotswolds, and there's some beautiful hills above Stoodley Castle and Winchcombe. And it should be the most beautiful place in the world, and it should be so uplifting. But I remember that going for a walk that bank holiday Monday and thinking, this is absolutely outrageous. And I was thinking so much of Lucy. I was thinking, this poor girl is in her cell on this beautiful day. And I remember feeling that I was like at the bottom of the ocean, and I had to crawl right up to the top of Mount Everest. And I thought, where are we even going to start? Because, of course, now we've got so much support around us. But at that time, it was just lonely people who all had a strong view on the Lucy Letby case. But there was nothing organized, nothing coordinated. And what has been so extraordinary is, over that time, how people have all come together, and slowly we've built up this incredible group of people from all walks of life, from statisticians, metabolic scientists, obviously medics, lawyers, and just how this movement, as it were, has grown over that period. And so that's what I really want to reflect on, and just to thank everyone, and just to appreciate and acknowledge everything that people have done, and inspire us for the future, because I think we've gone through the really, really difficult part already, and I think now we're in a position where we can build, and I think the next 12 months is going to be absolutely pivotal, and with all the support that's been achieved, we can go forward with strength, and I have absolute certainty that we will succeed.
Good, yeah. I guess a couple of things I would mention with regard to what you just said is, firstly, I would like to echo the fact that when I first heard about this, I didn't think we'd be in the position we are now as quickly as we have been. I thought it would take several years before there was a mainstream acknowledgement of this case, and I thought we had a very long road ahead of us. And I don't want to be complacent saying that we haven't. We can't afford to be complacent, but it is extraordinary. And I think you've heard Stephen Phelps, who's seen many miscarriages of justice, say on this channel, this just hasn't happened before. It's completely unprecedented. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you mentioned walking through the Cotswolds. So, I mean, I live on the edge of the Peak District. I walk, I put some of the places on my channel before. And I actually use that as a motivating factor because, firstly, we use it to decompress and replenish myself. And secondly, if I felt, down, or if I felt the weight of work or pressure, or however you may describe it, was bearing down on me, I just used to walk through the woods and say, well, Lucy can't do this. Lucy can't walk by a stream, and Lucy can't be in the sunshine and just be in a nice part of the world and doing something that is free that you take for granted. So I would always reflect on that and think, get yourself together and crack on, basically. So yeah, but I definitely know what you mean. There's been some moments where I would be doing something that should ostensibly be enjoyable, and I'd be quite miserable. But I just kept myself going for 1 hour, one way or another. So yeah, that's our general reflection on the current situation and where we are. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about some moments that have occurred over the last few years. And we're also going to talk about some of the people who, particularly those who maybe haven't been as acknowledged as others. So I've obviously interviewed many people from my channel, and I know some of those people quite well. But we're going to talk more today about people that have contributed without their contribution being acknowledged, or not being as acknowledged as it perhaps should have been. So,
Absolutely.
is there any way I know where I would like to start, John. So is there any way you would like to start?
Well, you crack on first.
Okay. So I think I have to start with Cleuci, because Cleuci de Oliveira was responsible for the New Yorker article by becoming interested in the case and then referring her interest to Rachel Aviv, who ultimately wrote the article in the New Yorker. Obviously, it's quite good timing this, because Rachel's recently been interviewed by The Observer, and it's the first time she's really spoken on this case for a long time. So I think you can't overstate the importance of that article. So many people I've spoken to have said it was my the first time I realized something could be very wrong with this case. So many people cite the New Yorker article. And I think the New Yorker article also laid the foundations for the mainstream media in this country. And then Cleuci's done amazing journalistic work of her own. I first noticed her because of her Twitter, or what's called X now. I just noticed how good it was, and very, very forensic. Strongly worded when it needs to be, but always professional, always with the right tone. So yeah, she's someone I've got a lot of admiration for, and she's helped me out with stuff, and I've tried to help her out with stuff, and yeah, I can't think of a better place to start. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think the New Yorker article was absolutely pivotal. Firstly, because it was in the New Yorker, which is a foreign and very, very reputable journal. But also it was so long, and it was so detailed, and it was by Rachel Aviv, and it covered so many different areas again. So that was very important as well, because it covered so many different areas, and experts in all the different areas could say, actually, the New Yorker is absolutely right on what that said. It reflects exactly what I think. So it sort of got everyone together in a way that very few other articles ever could. But I think it was also quite important that it was foreign. So it sort of brought people to, they thought, my goodness, an American journal has come forward and has brought this to us. And in many ways, that I think was really important in itself. But certainly, I mean, from David Davis is quite clear that was he probably would not have even got interested if it wasn't for the New Yorker article. And as you say, so many other really important, influential people cite the New Yorker. So it was really important that it was done so early. That's the other thing. If Rachel Aviv had done this 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we would have lost so much time. But the fact she did it so soon after was absolutely essential, because it meant we lost no time at all. In fact, we sort of started immediately, which has made all the difference.
Absolutely, I agree entirely. But then the next person I want to mention is a very unsung hero, and that's my assistant, Marian Kensler. I didn't mention her name for a long time. I first mentioned it for the first time at Waterstones, but she did something very important for me that I can't really discuss. But also, she's just always, she firstly did some very important research for my book. She's done an enormous amount of research for other things. Almost none of this has been credited. I've tried to credit her where I can. And also, she's just always there for me. You know, if I need something, I just go to her and she just makes it happen. So, she's an absolutely brilliant person. She's extremely intelligent. All of her work is outstanding. It's one of the very few times in my life where I've been able to give something, a pretty substantial piece of work to someone, and know that it will be done to the same standard I would do it myself. And that's the highest praise I can give her, because I don't think I've ever been able to say that about anyone else that I've given work to. She's absolutely exceptional, and you know, I'm never going to be able to repay her for what she's done. Like, she's always very modest about it, but I'm never going to be able to repay her. But I was lucky enough to meet her at the lunch. She came over because she's not British, and did you meet her, Jonathan?
I met her, and she was absolutely wonderful. But she's so humble. She's so humble, isn't she? And
absolutely.
And as you say, she has done so much, and yet she is so humble, as are so many people involved in this case. And that is the hallmark of most of the people I have been involved. Is they're so humble and dignified, and put so much in, and are so outstanding. I mean, that's the other thing. I've very rarely met a group of more high caliber people in anything I've ever done in my life. And I've had a very lucky life. I've been involved at a very high level in medicine, law, various other things. I've been involved in setting up charities. I've come across some very, very brilliant people. But Lucy Letby has, in the run up to her trial, she had the worst possible luck. But I think since then she has attracted some of the most extraordinary people, and it's just been a great pleasure and a great privilege for both of us to have met all of these, and to get to know and become friends with many of these incredible people.
Yeah, I can't really add much to that. I mean, I did mention when I was at Waterstones, I was speaking, I did talk about that, but I think it's not just, obviously it's an enormous privilege to be among them and to have met so many people. It's incredible, but also it really has given me a little bit more hope in humanity than I probably came into this with. Because it's not just the caliber of them as in terms of their expertise or knowledge or intelligence, it's the caliber of them as human beings, and their, you know, empathy and all of the human qualities that sometimes it's easy to, especially if you, I don't immerse myself in the media, but if you do, it's very easy to believe that we live in a very dark world where everyone's, you know, an awful human being, an awful person, basically, and that, you know, there's crime on every corner, and yeah, that's an element of society that we shouldn't turn a blind eye to. But I definitely have seen it's been the only silver lining, really, or the main silver lining has just been, you know, coming into contact with all these people and realizing there are a lot of great people out there who will not only put their necks on the line, but they'll give so much while receiving so little, you know. So that's been extraordinary, I think.
That's exactly it. Giving so much and yet not expecting anything at all in return. It's been quite incredible. Quite incredible.
Yeah, I agree. So the next person I want to mention is someone I mentioned a couple of times recently. Is Dr. James Phillips. So he was instrumental for me because I encountered him online, first of all. He's on Twitter or X, and I could see the caliber of what he'd done in the past, and I thought, well, this is exactly the kind of person that we need to be involved. And I specifically messaged him just to say, I'm writing a book. I'm really glad you're involved. Could you possibly assist me? I can't remember what I said even now. It seems like 20 years ago, but it just seems so long ago now. But I managed to connect with him, and then he said, absolutely. The first thing he said to me is, I need to meet you face to face to make sure that you're kosher. And I said, no problem. So I went to London to meet him, and had a good chat. I still think to this day, he's more impressed by my chess play than my writing, because he's a chess player. I play chess reasonably well. And he'd met Garry Kasparov and interviewed Garry Kasparov, who, if people don't know, was the world chess champion, one of the greatest chess players ever, pretty much universally considered to be either the best or second best ever. So we kind of bonded over that a bit, and we got on really well. And he said, yeah, I'll do whatever I want. So I thought, well, I better ask for everything. It's not every, at that time it was very abnormal for me to meet someone like that. It's becoming more normal now, but at the time it was very, very abnormal. So I thought, well, you're not in this kind of position every day, so you better just ask for everything you want. So I said, right, I want this, 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 and this. And he said, yeah, I'll make all that happen. And then he did. So, I'm enormously grateful to James for his support. And now I'm able to stand on my own 2 feet. But he's a great person, very, very intelligent, very compassionate guy as well. So I really respect him enormously. I think you met him, Jonathan, recently as well.
Yes, I met him at the conference in June, 19 Nurses Conference. And I agree, he's just such a impressive human being. And I don't know if you want to talk, but he gave up a lot to help. And that, again, I won't go into details, but unless you feel it's appropriate.
Yeah, I don't know if I can actually tell you, because I know I'm not agreed with him, but he did something incredibly noble, believe me. But I can't, please continue, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know what it was, and it involved a lot of sacrifice. And again, he didn't need to. He wasn't going to get anything out of it, and yet he did it. And again, he's just one of these perfect people in the background. He's worked so hard in the background. He hasn't taken any great credit. He hasn't wanted any credit. But again, when everything's done and finished, I think a lot of our achievement will be down to people like him for just sticking their necks out and just going the extra mile, and just using their experience and their caliber to help in a way that other people just can't. And for that, we're so grateful.
Absolutely. And then this is these are people who were initially important, I think, in the campaign, and also for me personally. So the last one is Julie Yates. Julie does feature in my book. She's a very experienced nurse who I interviewed, but she also helped me connect with some people. And I think she just really believed in me, as James did. And that was great, because it's probably the first time in my life when all the doors have just opened for me. And it's funny because people still, some of my small number of detractors who you get online, they still think I'm like connected with some massive PR company. And it's just absolutely untrue. All I did was I did explain this at Waterstones, but I just met a couple of people. They helped me, and we just literally, all I've ever done is I started off with a laptop and an email account, and I just sent people messages. That was that's what I did. I didn't have any support. I didn't have any kind of connections already. None. All I did was I started off with nothing, and I just asked people, "Will you help me?" And they did. So Julia was one of the initial people who really helped me a lot. And I think, though I have faith in my own ability, it's still always nice to have someone who believes in you as well. And of course, Julie's also, I should mention, as an initial founder of 19 Nurses as well. So I know you know Julie well, Jonathan. So tell us about Julie.
Oh, she's a wonderful lady. I mean, we're in a group together, you, me, and a few others of the sort of people who are very, very involved. And like the others, she just is there all the time. She's an absolute font of knowledge. If you need any information, she just has it to hand. She's got a brilliant opinion on things. She's very, very balanced. Her opinion on any aspect of the case is absolutely phenomenal, and she's just a wonderful support. And it's just amazing to have people there all the time who just will help and support you at any time, and just are that generous in every respect. So she's a wonderful person. Wonderful person.
Agree. So in this kind of category of initial important people, is there anyone you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, no, I think probably not. But I'm going to my great hero, and again, we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other. But one of the greatest moments for me was in March 2025 when I suddenly got an email to say that Lord Jonathan Sumption had written an article in the Sunday Times. In fact, I looked it up this morning. It was on the 30th of March 2025, Sunday Times, and he wrote I think it's a 600 to 800 word article in the Sunday Times. And to me, that was probably the biggest moment, because in the end, the Lucy Letby case is entirely legal. She's going to be exonerated through the legal processes, and that will be through the Court of Appeal. And I know that some people think that Jonathan Sumption is a sort of bit of a celebrity superstar type retired Supreme Justice, but actually, when I saw that article, and it's one of the few articles I've got a hard copy, and I have it in a drawer. And when I when I need a bit of inspiration, I reread it. But to me, to have somebody of his caliber, clearly he'd spent a lot of time on it. He really had researched it properly. When you read the article, it's not something where he's just got a little bit of information and given used his influence to. What I think that article really did endorse was that somebody of that caliber could see all the arguments that we've been putting forward, and to me, it was a big moment in the case, because I thought if a Supreme Court justice has this amount of insight, understands the case, and really understands what it's all about, and it's clear he didn't ever say that he said that he thought that Lucy Letby was probably innocent. That's the words he actually used, but it was clear. So to me, I just think that was to have a retired Lord Justice, Supreme Court Justice, to in any way give his support and to have considered the case so carefully, was certainly a moment where I thought we've got momentum and we're moving forward. And that was quite a long time ago. That was March 2025. And that was a big moment for me.
Yes. I can't really add much to that. Obviously, it's a big deal to have him involved. So I think that's a reflection of what we're going to discuss next, which is people that were starting to expose this in the public eye. Now, I guess this is, for this group, these are the people that have been the most publicly acknowledged out of those that we're going to discuss today. But I felt it was important for us to acknowledge their critical role in this whole development. So there's a few journalists here. So first one, Sarah Knapton for the Daily Telegraph, wrote this pioneering article and has covered this case very thoroughly. She'd been a real standout in the mainstream media, so I wanted to make sure that she was acknowledged first of all. What do you think about Sarah?
Yeah, no, fantastic. I mean, all the people we're going to discuss have been absolutely incredible. What I like is they sort of took the stance early on, and then they've just stuck to it, and they've just stuck to their guns. They've clearly taken a position, and all their work is, it's balanced. They're not taking sides, but it's just very, very high quality journalism. But again, the fact they came out early and we didn't waste a lot of time with sort of journalists umming and ahhing. They clearly took a stance early, and then we've been able to build on their articles and the press is incredibly important. I think in the last chapter of your book, you write how important potentially the media is, and public opinion in the end is critical, and actually we need the media, we need high quality journalists to achieve that, and the people we're going to discuss really are of the highest quality.
I agree. So the next two obvious people to mention are Felicity Lawrence and David Conn. As I've probably mentioned on the channel previously, I actually read a book written by Felicity about 25 years ago, over 20 years ago. It's called Not on the Label. It's about the food production system. I told her when I met her, it was very influential on me. So I already knew Felicity before, and I actually couldn't believe it when, I remember seeing her name and I thought, I know that name. I've seen it. And then I realised it's from this book. And David Conn, I don't know if I told the story where I bumped. Did I tell you the story where I bumped into him in London? It was
You told me.
It was one of the strangest things that's ever happened to me, because I was wandering around at rush hour near one of the major stations. I forget which one it was now, and probably people know London. It was absolutely packed. So I was walking down the main street, and every single restaurant queuing outside it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I sort of tried to go down a side street to see if I could find something to eat. And I'm just walking along, and bear in mind, I probably know about 4 people who live in London. Maybe it's less than 4. So I'm like walking along, and like suddenly this tap on the shoulder. All right, Chris. And it was David Conn from The Guardian. I could not believe it. So we just had a chat for 25 minutes about Lucy's case, and it was so weird. It was one of the most coincidental things I think has ever occurred in my life. But yeah, Felicity and David have been equally as good as Sarah, with some fantastic coverage in the Guardian as well.
But the other thing I'd like to do is to pay tribute. I mean, they were the original people that came out early, but I think there's a lot in recent months. I've been quite involved with a lot of other journalists who've taken their time. Which is the right thing to do. They've balanced. They've weighed up all the evidence. They've come to a clear conclusion, and a lot of the big name newspapers now are firmly on the side of Lucy.
Absolutely.
And I just want to acknowledge that. And I've had the email addresses of some of the editors and some of the specific journalists from each of those publications who are involved, and they've been an absolute joy. Actually, they've been really, really pleasant to work with, and very, very generous, and again, incredibly supportive. So I just want to say that I will say the Sun, because the Sun, are important. They are an important publication in this country, and when they decided that they thought that they wanted to support Lucy, they have been extremely good, and we've had an enormous amount. They've been very, very supportive. But all the other, I mean, obviously we're going to be talking about Peter Hitchens and the Mail, and but I just, once they made that decision that they were going to support it, they have been really, really faithful and very, very helpful, and I really appreciate that from them.
Agreed. So let's go and move on to Peter Hitchens. So he was obviously very important because he was one of the first journalists to speak out. I know there was perhaps one other as well. As when talk about John Sweeney as well. And I think there was another one in a Scottish newspaper, but nevertheless, it's not just the fact that Peter Hitchens spoke out, it's the fact that he obviously, it's hard to think of a better known print journalist in this country. I can't think of one. So that makes an enormous difference. And I must say as well, I did speak to him for quite a while at the launch about, he was like ushered over to me. I didn't seek him out, but like Debbie Tennant brought him over to me and said, "Here's Chris, make sure you speak to him." So I'd spoke to him for quite a while, and he's just a very nice guy. He's just very generous. Not the way he's portrayed at all. I think portrayed as a, I don't know, almost stuffy, or not at all. He's like very friendly guy. He was very generous to me. I think a great deal of him. I mean, I respected him before he got involved with this, but obviously that's increased my respect. And I also think he has been willing to write about the police. Now, I think I think it's fair for me to claim that have been one of the foremost people to speak about the police in this campaign, because I felt early on that they were getting away with it, basically, and that they needed to be put under the spotlight. And he was one of the people that has been willing to do that as well. So I think that's really important, because I think not only is it important practically speaking, but I think it will be important for Lucy's defence and appeal as well. So yeah, did you meet Peter at?
I did very briefly, but I did email him, and he very kindly emailed me back. And he, again, as I was blown away. I emailed him not thinking he'd reply to me at all, but he sent a very, very pleasant response. And as you say, he's another very humble, wonderful man. So, yeah.
And then Philip Hammond, Dr. Philip Hammond. First, I need to thank him for endorsing my book, which was very much appreciated. I don't think I could have got a better triumvirate than Davis, Hammond, and Ashton. I was pretty pleased with that. But yeah, obviously, what we should mention, Philip Hammond is perhaps the best example of this. But what we should mention as well is that all these journalists are not just writing one article; it's like relentless. That's what makes it so extraordinary. It's not just there's not just there's one article, this is a bit fishy, never mind, I'll go back to my, it's just new stuff coming out all the time. And I think Dr. Philip Hammond has perhaps been the best example of that, because of the nature of the publication that he writes for has allowed him to write these. I think it's on column 39 now.
39, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, he's done tremendous work. Of course, the fact that he comes from this informed medical perspective, that definitely helps. I've not met him. He's someone I haven't met. Obviously, we've exchanged messages and such like. I hope I meet him one day. But I'm really grateful to him for his work.
Well, I know. I mean, I'd like to talk a bit about Philip Hammond, because I've known Philip Hammond for 30 years, and he's an extraordinary chap. I think he is one of the brightest people I know. He has an extraordinary brain, but he also has a quite unprecedented and absolutely exceptional presentation skills. He's got a brilliant communicator, both in how he writes and how he speaks. And I think very few people realize, but he's been for 30 years a really mainstream comedian and involved in comedy. In fact, in 1990, when he was just a junior doctor, he had a Saturday night comedy spot called Struck Off and Die on BBC Radio 4. So he was in his 20s, and he did, and he is exceptionally funny. I think the problem with the Lucy Letby case, he's come across as quite sort of serious and dour, but actually he is absolutely hilarious. And so after that, he did stand-up comedy all around the country. He used to do performances he's been a performer in all sorts of theatres and places. He used to come to Chipping Norton, where I lived, but he's also done very, very big venues. And what's so amazing is that it's all medical humour. Everything is completely medical, but yet he is just so funny and so brilliant. And then, of course, about 10 years ago, he was a real mainstream guy. He was often on Question Time. He was often interviewed. So he is a very, very, very high caliber pundit, journalist. He really is. And again, like you, I was just so. It was such an endorsement when he got so involved. And again, as you say, it's his commitment. He's obviously absolutely committed to this, and to have continued right from the very start, because he started right at the first of his private eyes, was just weeks after the reporting restrictions were lifted. In fact, he was one of the first people that wrote to Lady Thirlwell before her inquiry started. Yeah. So he's been involved from the very start, and he is just, you couldn't have a more high caliber person. I write to Lucy, and I've said from the start, I said, if I had one person that I would choose to be on my side, if I had one supporter, somebody like Phil Hammond, you couldn't get any better. And I've just so much respect for him, and he is just has been quite extraordinary through all this.
I agree. And then the last journalist I want to mention is John Sweeney. Obviously very kindly stepped in to chair I mean, I must say, when I did that, and I don't know if you know this, Jonathan, but initially he was going to interview me for like 20 minutes. I didn't know he was going to ask one question, then go, right, let's just throw it open to everyone. And he just did that completely spontaneously
Yeah.
at Waterstones. But I remember when he tweeted, I read his tweet on the day of conviction that he referenced. And I also read the comment section for that. And it takes to have achieved a lot in life. I was watching an interview with Wayne Squire on Panorama, and then I started to hear the voice in the background. I was like, I know this voice. Of course, it's John Sweeney. So he'd been a very established journalist for a very long time. And when you have something to lose, it takes a lot of courage to say something that you know is going to get an extraordinarily bad reaction. And I read through the entire comment section. There may have been one or two or three at the most comments that were supportive out of about 3,000. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself in that position. And I must say, and I'm not saying this to diminish myself or be falsely modest or anything, but I wouldn't have had that level of courage. When I became public, I'm just not brave enough. I don't mind admitting that, because to get that relentless, you're the worst person in the world. I'm unsubscribing immediately. It was just relentless criticism, but he just simply. I mean, and I really don't care what people think, but I'm not going to put myself in the middle of a shitstorm like that, for want of a better phrase. And he just doesn't care. He just thinks, I will say what I think, and that's it. And anyone, that was, I think, really bold. And of course, his podcast was extremely good. I really appreciate him stepping in and speaking out so strongly about this case. So, do you have any thoughts, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I think it's so important that we do reflect now, because it's so easy to forget just what an absolute monster she was portrayed as. I mean, in August 2023, there was no doubt in the whole country that we were dealing with an absolute sort of Harold Shipman sort of character who was just going out there murdering babies willy-nilly. And I mean, I immediately saw this, but for 99.9% of the country, Lucy Letby was just this complete the personification of evil. And as you say, for anyone with a high standing to stand up and say, I think there's been a mistake here, I think this is a miscarriage of justice, was just absolutely unthinkable. And the bravery to do that at that stage, and all the possible it could have completely destroyed his career if people if we hadn't managed to achieve what we have. But so I agree with you. It's just incredible bravery, and I just can't. I have just such respect for people who are that brave and will put themselves out there when there's, again, as we've said so many times today, there was nothing potentially he was going to gain from it if he was wrong, or even if he was right. Because even if he was right, if public perception didn't change and everyone continued to think she was a murderer, then what was he going to gain? Nothing. So incredible bravery.
Agreed. So we're going to talk on the back of that. It's all been very uplifting so far, but it's not all been uplifting over these 2.5 years since things really started to move. So we're going to talk now about some of the more challenging moments that have occurred, some of the hurdles that we've had to leap over. And I'll let you start, Jonathan. What would you like to say about this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was the very beginning when things were most difficult. I mean, for me, I remember I actually went to the demonstration outside the Thirlwell inquiry in March 2025, and I remember a lot of other people. There was a lot of communication between people who were going to attend. A lot of people went out the day before, but I decided I was quite busy the day before, so I got into my car at 3:00 in the morning. It was pitch dark. It was March, and I drove from the Cotswolds up to Liverpool city centre, and I got there about sort of 7:30, 8:00 in the morning. And I remember I got to sort of outside the inquiry, and suddenly everyone appeared. But I was sort of quite worried, because there wasn't really it didn't appear that there were that many people. And in fact, to this day, I still don't quite understand how many pictures of footage has come out from it, because there didn't appear to be a lot of TV cameras around. There were obviously a lot more than there appeared, but it just, at that stage, we seemed to be a sort of small group of sort of fanatical people. And I remember we did get some, I had a banner saying "Free Lucy Letby" and no murders occurred. And somebody came up to me and said, "Look, what are you doing? Who are you? I mean, what the hell do you think you're doing? I remember the guy said to me, around here, we feel very strongly about this. This people have been murdered, and you're saying she didn't." And I remember at that time that was, I mean, we were long way further down the line then, but I still remember thinking,
what did you say to that, Jonathan, when he said that to you?
Well, I was with another person who's been on your channel, and I just turned to him and said, "Look," I said, "I'm a doctor. I've been a doctor for many, many years. I completely understand what you're saying, but I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't have this placard if I didn't firmly believe it." And I said, "There is a load of information out there. Please, please look." And I gave him some sites and some things to look at. I said, "Please understand, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't fully believe that there's been an enormous miscarriage of justice." And I said to him, "Look, it's far bigger than just Lucy Letby." I said, "The whole justice system, the whole way in which this has been handled, the whole way that we've got to this, and the implications for the NHS if this isn't properly sorted out, are absolutely huge." And I said, "Please believe me." I said, "Please, please, just do spend some time looking at it, because I can understand how you feel, but until you've actually researched it." And I was very, very humble towards him. And actually, he changed his tune. I don't know whether he actually went and looked things up, but he certainly was mollified, because when he addressed me, he was very, very angry. But by the time we parted, he at least understood where I was coming from, which I thought was a success, if nothing else.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I wanted to mention a couple of things. So we forget this now, but one day we were sat in our homes and Lucy had been arrested in prison, effectively. Well, certainly, I don't know if it's technically described as being arrested, that she was certainly questioned in prison. And then obviously CPS charges were filed by Cheshire Police. And that for me was a very dark day, because although pretty soon it became obvious to me that it was never going to go to court, on the day, you don't have that sense of certainty, do you? You just see this horrible headline and you think, is this, I mean, everything, I can't remember exactly the date of that, but we'd made some progress by then. And like, is this all going to be sidelined so they have another trial and then another 8 months? And then they're going to dig up more stuff after that. So that was awful. And the fact they fell away is great, but that time was not pleasant, I think you could say. Thankfully, of course, the complete trumped up nonsense. The police should never have been investigating it. It should never have been sent to the CPS. Once we began to hear the nature of those charges, I felt better about it, but that wasn't good. It must have been awful for Lucy.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you imagine?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, for me, and the thing that I never lose sight of is that there is a girl every day who's in a small wing of Bronzefield Prison, and that is where she has lived her life. And I just never stop thinking what it must be like for her. And you mentioned it earlier, and I'm the same. I live in the most beautiful spot, and I love going for walks, and I look at all these beautiful things, and I think Lucy can't see this. Lucy, and that inspires me more than anything is to get her out of that, because she is a human being, and although enormous changes are going to occur when she's exonerated, and she will change the criminal justice system forever, there's going to have to be big changes to the NHS. Something like this must never happen again. But at this moment, and until she is released, she has a terrible life, and that's what drives me. That's my biggest driver. That's what inspires me to continue and to do everything I possibly can for her.
Absolutely. So we're going to now discuss another group of unsung heroes. Now, actually, one of these people I had on the channel recently was this guy, Rowland. So you've obviously heard a bit about him and heard him speak just a brilliant guy again. But Guy did so much behind the scenes. As I've mentioned previously, if you've seen something filmed, Guy basically almost inevitably filmed it. And he gives his time very willingly to travel around. And I must say as well, this is just a small point, but I think it's actually not a small point. He always has to live with the pressure of getting it right. Like no one else helps him or anything. He just has to be there, get all the cameras, make sure it's recorded, make sure it's done well, edit it together, and can get it online. And you know, I think he's done a phenomenal job of that. And he's always working hard on things. And I really wanted him to come onto YouTube recently, just to be properly acknowledged, because he's done as much, I think, as much work as anyone without ever having a public profile, and certainly even, I would say, being acknowledged. So yeah, Guy's definitely someone that I have enormous respect for.
But he's just so talented, isn't he? I mean, he's just so talented, because not only does he get the visuals absolutely right, he just edits it absolutely perfectly, but the actual narrative is just perfect. He just gets the right sentences, he gets the right timing. And a lot of documentaries, you sort of do have periods where you fall asleep and you're not quite fully engaged, but the way he presents it, every moment he just keeps you completely engaged. And just the way everything is presented, I've very rarely ever met a documentary maker who quite has that ability. And so yet again, Lucy couldn't have a better person to be supporting her and producing these extraordinary documentaries. I mean, they really are at a completely unparalleled level, in my opinion. They are just phenomenal.
I agree. I want to mention briefly, he made that video in the run up to my book that lasted about 8-9 minutes, which when I saw it, I thought that was sensational. Now, obviously, I know a lot about the case and I'm a good fluent speaker, but I can assure you it wasn't that sensational when I was in my living room talking. I mean, he made that, the way he put that together was incredible. I was absolutely blown away by how good it was. He made me look great, which was, I'm I speak okay, but it wasn't, just the way he put it together was amazing. It truly. So I really respect him for that and everything he's done. And then
it's the time as well. I mean, he spends an incredible amount of time, like all these people do. But I mean,
can I say? Let me just mention, I hate editing. Like, it's so boring. Like, I mean, I put virtually no time into editing but his is always so good.
Yes. But it is so time consuming, so that needs to be acknowledged. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is not the most enjoyable task in the world, editing video. So, and he does it so well. But yeah, we enormously appreciate Guy. So next to Samantha and Jo, so it's Samantha Longhurst, and I've forgotten Jo's surname. I'm really sorry. I was saying to Jonathan before. I know some quite well, but I've completely forgotten her name. But I looked it up. But they'd founded a Facebook group, Road to Freedom. That has I think over 15,000, approximately 15,000, something like that, followers now. And I remember when Sam was going to start that, and I thought that's great. Maybe you'll get a few hundred people, and to get to 15,000 is like, just no resources, none of us have got any resources or any support. We just do the best that we can. So I think what they've achieved is fantastic. It's a real hub for Lucy's case. And there are other Facebook pages as well that are also very good as well. I can't mention every single person or every single one or everything, but I just wanted to mention that because I think it's kind of, a pioneering one and has helped connect people. It's done so much good. So I really felt that needed to be acknowledged.
Yeah. But I'd like that. I'm not on Facebook, and I'm the least social media savvy person in the whole world. But it is awesome how social media has been so powerful here, and most of the groups the vast majority have been incredibly helpful. And the wonderful thing is it gives choice to people. Some people like different styles of social media, and almost all of them have been accommodated, and people can find what suits their needs and their wishes, and that's again something else which is absolutely brilliant in this campaign.
Absolutely. So the next person I want to mention is Jabe. So his YouTube channel is Jabe's Allowed. But he also, as well as doing a lot of good work on YouTube, he also created the Lucy Letby Innocence website, which I think is the best resource for this case. In terms of a written resource, it's incredible. He's put an enormous amount of work into that, and I look at it all the time to find stuff, find documents. I mean, for God's sake, just that website alone, just on one thing alone, it's a better repository of the Thirlwall documents than the Thirlwall Inquiry website. What does that tell you about the Thirlwall Inquiry? But by far, it's better than the Thirlwall Inquiry website, just on the Thirlwall Inquiry. And then he put loads of other stuff together. So, and I will say as well, I often interact with him, and he's often pointing things out in the comments, and he will tell me things that I need to know. And if I need him, if I can't go to Marian, or Marian's busy, I'll go to Jabe and say, what do you think about this? Or can you remember this? Can you get this? And he'll get it every single time. So, I know that people respect the work that I've done, but I want to be clear that other people have helped me, and I am just a front-facing person. Yeah, I'm not going to downplay my role in it, but I often go to Jabe, I often go to Marian, I often go to other people, and they always deliver. And yeah, I guess Jabe is not known publicly at all. I kind of know who he is, but I'm not allowed to say, and I won't say. But the thing he's done with his website, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an extraordinary resource. I mean, the volume of information and the very, very clear and concise way in which he presents it, and he makes it so accessible. That's the other thing that's so important. It's very accessible. If you want a particular aspect, he's got everything covered, and that in my opinion is just so invaluable. And again, as you say, he's in the background, doesn't want any adulation, doesn't want any, but I mean, I can't even begin to comprehend how much time it's taken him to achieve what he's achieved. But again, as I've said, I mean, your book is an incredible resource, but his website is also an incredible resource, so that anything we need, it's just there and accessible to anyone who wants to see it.
Absolutely. I think very neatly organized as well, so you can find things. So yeah, another person that is not well known, but should be. And then you wanted to mention Richard and Pat, Jonathan.
Yeah. Well, Richard and Pat are my two absolute heroes. Richard is a pharmacist, and Richard is a radiographer, and Pat is a pharmacist. I never quite understood how they got together, but again, they were absolutely at the very start of the campaign. They showed incredible bravery. And I think, like me and like other people, they could see that this was a major miscarriage of justice. And very early on, they wanted to do something. And the very first opportunity to do anything at all came in, I think, May 2024, which was when the appeal for her the first court of appeal hearing happened at the Royal Courts of Justice. And the two of them made a banner, and it's just justice for Lucy Letby. You'll see it on a lot of it's quite an iconic picture that is often shown. Richard's a great guy, and he's very, very nice. Every time we meet, he's very, very complimentary of me, and I appreciate that. But in my view, he's just an absolute hero. But Pat is very exceptional as well. She's absolutely tiny. She has a wonderful face. Her face is just so fantastic. And the two of them decided that they would go to the Court of Appeal, and they would stand out and they would protest. And again, you've got to think about it in the context that at that time, everyone thought that Lucy Letby was just the most heinous murderess and was no support for her whatsoever. And they went and they stood outside on the day that the appeal was being heard. They went and they stood outside the Royal Courts of Justice with their banner, and there's pictures of that. And they didn't know what to expect at all. And there were just 3 other people there. So it was Richard and Pat and 3 other people. And at the beginning, people walked past, and I don't say they got terrible abuse, but certainly people looked at them as if they were sort of dreadful. What on earth were they doing? And I remember Richard telling me that Pat started to tremble, and she looked very, very scared. And he put his arm around her and said, "Look, just hold your head up high. You're doing the right thing." And in the pictures, you can see Pat holding her head up high with a wonderful look on her face. And there's another amazing story from that day. And again, Richard told me about this, was that they were standing there, and theirs is obviously a very simple banner, but some of the other people had more complex banners explaining why they considered Lucy Letby to be innocent. And this woman walked past, and she was just a passerby. She was somebody who hadn't planned to do anything at all. She just walked past, and she stood in front of the banners and she read them. And then she looked into the faces of all of the people there, including Richard and Pat. And then she just stepped forward and she stood beside them. And for the next 2 or 3 hours, she stood beside them. And I've called her the 6th protester at this original protest. And so the other thing about Richard and Pat is that we've all got our different roles. We all do different things, and they are the protesters, and everything that ever happens, they either one or other or both of them go to everything. And I just respect them so much for their role, particularly as they had the courage to put their heads above the parapet and stand up for Lucy right at the very beginning. And I've said to both of them many times that they, in my opinion, are the absolute heroes of this case.
Yeah, hard to disagree with that. I don't know Pat as well as Richard, but I do know her. I've know Richard quite well. I should say that Richard has an NHS role, so that's an important thing to add to the courage that we've already documented. Is that he could have lost his job quite easily. No, he didn't. But and he's absolutely fine, and the people that he works with know. And of course, now it's a much more acceptable view. It's the majority view now, I would say, even.
Yeah.
But he was taking a big risk, you could argue. I don't know much about Pat's employment and so forth, but I would imagine it'd be similar. So,
she might be retired, but I don't know, to be quite honest. I don't know.
I couldn't really say because I don't know. But regardless of that, I mean, I found that a very moving story. And, I'm not someone that could do that. I've had to kind of, as someone who's kind of naturally introverted, for me to go out there with a banner at that time, there's just no way. I just don't think I could have done that. So I think people that go to the very, very early demonstrations are, again, incredibly courageous, incredible. So I really respect that. And we don't need to be so nervous about the public reaction now, of course.
Absolutely.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is 19 nurses. So we mentioned Julie already. So Julie was a founding member. We're going to talk about some other people that are involved in 19 nurses. So Viv and Pat are other founding members. And we need to tread a little bit carefully here because one of them is still a nurse and cannot have a public profile. So what I would like to say, really, you've heard Viv on the channel, Viv's been on the channel. I think actually the bit where she talked about the day Lucy was arrested when she was working at the hospital was one of the most powerful things that I've done, even though I didn't say anything, obviously. That was incredible. And I think the energy I did say this at the first meeting they did was in Hereford. You know, I was invited. I was invited to speak. I didn't know anyone at that time. I didn't know any of them. I'd just done a bit on YouTube. No one knew who I was. It was, I mean, even that feels like an enormously long time ago, and that was a year ago. Just think about the last year. Think how much. I mean, just in that year, so much has happened to me. So much has happened in this campaign. But literally, I can't even remember how I got invited. But just someone said, "Oh, would you like to come? Would you like to speak?" And I was like, "All right, why not?" And I'd never done public speaking, and I didn't know anyone. And we were in this kind of back room of a pub, wasn't it?
Yes.
I don't think I ever met you. Were you there, Jonathan?
I wasn't there. No, I wasn't there, but I've heard a lot about it. Yeah.
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 So it was in Hereford, and I remember saying at the end, what you've been able to put together with zero resources is incredible. Because we had really good high caliber speakers there. The room was full, and I think what they've been able to arrange and organise, so in a very short period of time, we've never got any money. They've got no money at all. Is phenomenal, utterly phenomenal. And I know we mentioned James Phillips earlier. I know he conveyed a message to them to say what you've built is incredible. And James has been at the highest levels of government. So that's all I can say. I can't say any more than that. But that's the highest praise I can give them. What they've done is incredible.
Yeah. No, I mean, they are an absolutely extraordinary group of people. And again, it's just their enormous commitment and time that they just coordinate any information, anything that needs to be done. But I think the other thing which is so incredible is the conferences. You mentioned Hereford, which, as you say, was in the back room of a pub in Hereford. The next conference was in the University of Manchester in an extremely nice, large lecture theatre and again, we got a lot of help and resources and put together an incredibly good conference. That was in November of 2025. But then in June of 2026, we were in one of the most phenomenal and most beautiful lecture theatres in University College London, in the main part of University College London. And we had an absolutely breathtaking group of speakers, and everything could not have been more professional. But as you say, with no resources, and everybody just contributed to them. And people believe in the 19 nurses, and everybody is willing to give their best to ensure that everything they do is the highest possible caliber. And everything they've achieved is just because they've inspired other people, and those people have then donated and given of their time and whatever they can to make sure that everything that the 19 nurses have done in the last year has been, couldn't have been any better. I mean, it could not, even if they had a large budget and lots of resources, I don't think they could have put on two better conferences than they have done. And they are a truly phenomenal organization, and now over 1,000 members and rising. And since the book, and I mean, the book has been incredibly helpful, they're getting people contacting them. And the other thing which is extraordinary is their literature. They're beautifully written, very, very clear, very, very, just absolutely hits the spot. Very clear messaging. So the achievements of the 19 nurses in such a short space of time just can't be underestimated. Utterly phenomenal.
Yeah, we also want to mention Roger as well.
Yeah.
Dr. Roger Norwich, who has been involved with the group and is in my book, but that doesn't even scratch the surface of the things that he's done. I mean, it doesn't even, I don't think I mean, I can't tell you everything that he's done, but he's constantly doing things, constant efforts to coordinate, to assist. And I must say as well, this is a very trivial point, but he did invite me to spend some time at the Royal Society of Medicine on the day of the launch of my book, which was really, really nice because I've never been anywhere like that before. I've never been in a private members club before. And it was really nice. There was just a group of us and we just had a chat and had a couple of drinks, non-alcoholic actually. and 'cause it was boiling that day, so I just wanted to rehydrate really. But he's a lovely fellow. His wife is fantastic as well. She's in the background doing things. They're always constantly doing things, and I must say, been so supportive towards me as well, and encouraging. And I think knowing that I have the support and endorsement of someone of his caliber, she don't know half the things they've done. He's done incredible lot of things in his life. So yeah, that was a big kind of boost for me. And yeah, I'm really kind of proud, like I say, he's a friend of mine. What do
No,
you have to say about Roger, Jonathan?
if I was to highlight just one person in the whole of the Lucy Letby campaign, I would have to say Roger Norwich is right up there. Let's start from the beginning. Although people talk about the Shu Lee conference in February, March 2025, people forget that the first conference was in December 2024 when Mark MacDonald only had Roger and Richard Taylor, and that was the very start of it. And at that time, we didn't know that Shu Lee was going to do what he did. But so that was at that time. Roger thought he was going to be because Roger is an extremely eminent expert witness. That's not nothing confidential about that. I mean, he was a very, very good neonatologist, but what he is absolutely brilliant at is being a neonatal expert witness. And he's made it very clear he's not going to be an official expert witness. But he was prepared at that time to do that. But he's now says to me he's a campaigner. But again, I reiterate, he's one of these people, and there are not many in life who you just never stop being flabbergasted by what he's achieved, and we're still just scratching the surface. I mean, I'm not breaching any confidentiality, that he is a very, very eminent geologist. And has extraordinary credentials within the world of geology, not to mention, in fact, he became very, very eminent in the world of geology at such an early age that he decided that he wanted to go to medical school, train as a doctor, and become a neonatologist while continuing with his incredible geology credentials. And again, he is just somebody who is involved in so many different things, and he is the other thing about him is he is just somebody who there are a few people in life who he just does not fail in anything he does. He just is so determined, and therefore for Lucy to have somebody like Roger who really is absolutely determined to ensure that justice is achieved and she is exonerated. But in every way, Roger is just somebody who I feel my life has been so much incredible enhancement having met and got to know Roger the way I have in the last year or so.
I agree completely. So another challenging moment along the way was the release of the Netflix documentary. Now, ironically, that turned out to be a massive plus. Someone was just saying the other day, actually in the Facebook group, or one of them, that they'd seen a Netflix documentary that had convinced them that it was a miscarriage of justice. Which is not the intention of the Netflix documentary, but it was nevertheless, I think, a little. I mean, for starters, my channel spiked at that point in a way that, even though my growth has been, very, very much appreciated and, incredible, really. But still, you should see the spike when Netflix came out. It was absolutely. It's literally you can see all the. And it goes like that, and then comes back down, and then it goes. But it's still gone up. But then I don't know when I'll ever reach the peak of Netflix again, because it just brought an enormous amount of attention. And of course, it was basically a propaganda piece. Basically, they had to provide more balance because they would have looked ludicrous to do anything else. But initially, that was intended to be a propaganda piece for the police, and it still very much reflected that. So that is a challenging thing that we're still living with, I think, because people still say, "Oh, but she said no comment." It's just complete misinformation. It's absolute deceitful misinformation of what actually happened. So yeah, that's kind of a dark moment for me. What do you think about the Netflix and that kind of period, Jonathan?
Well, I can't see how any reasonable, balanced person can show without an unabridged view of 3 arrests. They showed all 3 of Lucy's arrests. I can't see how anyone can see that that was helpful or kind or useful. I mean, it was only going to completely backfire on them. And I just can't see, and many parts of the Netflix just seemed at the time to serve no purpose to the police at all, and to completely backfire on what they were trying to achieve. And but yeah, I mean, it was such. I mean, it was absolutely abhorrent to watch it. But in many ways, I'm pleased I did see all 3 arrests absolutely undiluted, unadulterated, and to see just how horrible it was, and to see just how wrong it was, particularly when it's quite obvious there was no need to put her in handcuffs. There was no need to arrest her even. She was completely compliant. You only need to arrest somebody if there is any doubt that they're going to comply. She'd even actually, and they even said it in the Netflix documentary, that she'd actually asked to be interviewed. She wanted to meet up with the police, and therefore, if quite clearly somebody's saying, "I want to meet up with you, I want to talk to you," you don't need to do an early morning raid into their house and confront them the way they did and be so egregiously unpleasant. So I think the Netflix was a complete own goal, in my opinion, and I can't see how they could see that this was a propaganda success, or even if she had been a heinous murderess. I just think the way that they presented the Netflix was just negative towards the police in every respect, and certainly nothing positive, or it was nothing that was in any way painted them in a positive light at all.
No. I asked Guy this question, John, so let me ask you.
Yeah.
Let's say Lucy was 100% guilty. Do you think even then the Netflix documentary would have been in good taste?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, it was just really, really egregious, horrible, worst possible journalism. And what right have they got? I mean, if they police footage of an arrest should be something that's always kept confidential. It should never even be. It should be a completely confidential. It should be completely confidential. For Cheshire Police to clearly sell it to Netflix, and there must have been some sort of commercial deal involved, to sell the footage of 3 separate arrests, and just so egregious to watch her being handcuffed, to watch her being taken out to the car. As you say, even if she was a Harold Shipman type murderess, nobody should have that indignity. It's just absolutely, completely, and totally outrageous. And I hope eventually that they are, that within police circles this is investigated, and that they are brought to that they are completely accountable for it, because they should be.
Yeah.
Nothing could be more vile than showing that. And particularly the other things. I mean, fair enough with Lucy, but it was her parents were. I mean, as we've all said, the reaction of her mother is just soul destroying, awful, and should never, never, never have been allowed in the public domain. Absolutely never.
Yeah. We were just saying, actually, before we started recording, their parents would behave with a level of dignity that is heroic.
Yeah.
I don't know how they've managed it, truly. I mean, I don't think I could, because I'd want to say something, but they've been so dignified, and even their response to that, we were saying, was perfectly measured.
Yes.
It was, yeah, I think, I just think it's awful that they've been put through this, and I'll never forget the noise her mother made. It was awful. Let's talk about some more unsung heroes. So I particularly wanted to talk about some pioneers on YouTube,
Yes.
because they laid the foundations for me, really. And I never had any intention of doing YouTube. It's just something that's happened, and it's been a very enjoyable and worthwhile addition to my life. But I would never have gone on camera so early as some people did. So first of all, Mark, all of you
Yeah.
know Mark Mays, and in a sense, not perhaps as unsung as some of the others because people know who he is, but he just went on camera so early on just because he thought, I have to do something. I have to do something about this. And the hours he has spent recording, I've done live streams now. I've done 2 3 hour ones, I've done some 2 hour ones. He'll do them for like 6 7 hours or even more. I mean, it was,
9 hours 45 minutes is his record.
okay. So, like, trust me, 2 hours at the end of that, I'm tired. 10 hours is ridiculous. And it's just purely because he's so passionate about justice being done in this case. I know Mark a little bit. I don't know like enormously well. You probably seen me on a couple of his live streams. Jonathan's done more than me. But yeah, just a lovely, genuine, decent human being who I think showed incredible bravery to go on camera at a time when, again, we must emphasize 99.9% of people, or certainly 99% of people, thought she was the worst human being in the world. And if, to put yourself on video forever, and so you're there to be shot at, is something that requires immense courage. And that's all I can say, really.
I think the other thing about Mark is that he is so phenomenally talented. I mean, his background is that he went to acting school. He was for a time an actor. I think he's had a very, very difficult time before Lucy. He was doing a little bit of YouTube, but often very, very small audiences, very, very low profile. He was on the bill. He had a part on the bill, but very, very sadly, and this is what is terrible for an actor. He's a brilliant actor, but he had to play a rather sort of uninteresting, boring, ineffectual solicitor's aide on the bill, which he did play absolutely brilliantly. But I don't think it helped his career, because I think people saw him and thought, oh, well, he doesn't look very good. But actually, his ability to do mimicry, his impersonations, the content of his songs, his singing, and just the brilliance of it all is just phenomenal. And I think that was also because not only did he do the live streams and he brought factual things forward, the quality of his comedy and his singing and his music and everything else was so good that, again, this engaged people and got people interested and made people laugh. And I think you can't underestimate the power of making people laugh. And despite the incredible seriousness of what he was dealing with, and just the caricatures of each of the people within the within the case. Enormous talent, a phenomenal talent, and as you say, just such a lovely, kind, humane human being. I have such respect for Mark. I mean, he's a very, very private person, very, very quiet, very, very, very. He's difficult to get to know, but I don't think we can ever I don't think we can ever underestimate the enormous contribution that he made, and must be so thankful for it.
Yeah, I agree completely. And then I wanted to mention Stuart Gilham because he has done a lot of great content recently. And I got to tell you that one of the reasons I was never going to do YouTube was because there's already Mark, there was Jabe, there was Stuart, there was other people as well. And, I used to look at their it never even crossed my mind really, because I thought they already can do things that I could never do. So I'd never had any intention of doing it. And then I realized, I did that first video. I've done it with people who remember it, about the Thurl inquiry. And then I realized, oh, well, this is what I can do. I can do kind of deeper analysis of things. I can't do the audio editing, video editing, all that kind of stuff. But, Stuart is able to piece things together in a similar way to Guy, from video, and do things that I can't do. And he knows the case inside out, and he's again very studious about it and wanting to know everything. So I'm always really glad to see that he has had success on the platform as well. Has a lot of subscribers and gets a lot of views. I know one of his videos recently that he just made about Mark Roberts, wasn't it? Got 55,000, 60,000, which is really difficult to do. So I, really commend him for what he's doing. And I think, it's very, although he was there before me, I feel like we kind of go hand in hand together as doing slightly different things, but that hopefully accompany each other. Yeah. So I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think everyone works really well together. Everyone has their strengths and they all have a slightly different perception and perspective. And I think it all works brilliantly well. And you're all brilliant. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we want to mention Carl as well, Carl Perkins, because I've got his name right, haven't I?
Yeah, Carl. Yeah, Perkins.
Yeah. Because he was another pioneer with Mark as well. He was one of the first people to go on camera and speak very bluntly about how wrong this is. And I have spoken to Carl because I've been on a live stream with him before. So he's never been anything other than extremely courteous and encouraging towards me, which I really appreciate. And so I've got to say, Jonathan, sometimes I feel bad that I've become such a focus of this when other people were there before me. And, I feel like I want people to understand that their contribution is as important. And, it's not about me. I'm just one person who's done the best I possibly can. And I know I've got certain skills. And obviously I'd done a lot of research when I started because I was writing a book and the first draft was completed. But I sometimes feel bad that, I guess I'm not the go-to person on YouTube now, or not for me to say, but numerically you'd have to say that. And yet I wasn't really the first person, not by a long chalk. So, I'm grateful for people like Carl and Mark because they went on camera and they did this before I did. And they showed me the path, really. And then I just picked up the baton from them, to be honest. So I think it's really important for me to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Now, Carl, the wonderful thing about Carl is every opportunity that came up in the early days, he just embraced it. Anything that came up, and there were very few opportunities in the early days. I remember us going to Ponders End Park. He heard there was going to be a rally there. So he sent out to all his subscribers that he wanted us to all meet at Ponders End Park for a rally in June. I remember it was the 27th of June, 2025. And it was a very typical Caribbean run event because we turned up there at the right time, and the Lucy Letby supporters outnumbered everybody else by about 10-1. And it did all in the end. It was a much smaller rally than we've been led to believe. But the wonderful thing about him was he was great, and I met some absolutely incredible people that day. It was a really, really hot day, and we were all waiting for things to happen, and it took about 3 or 4 hours. But the wonderful thing was that he made a speech which was filmed on YouTube, and it was a really, really good speech. I hadn't realised his mum was a nurse, and that's probably why he feels so strongly. And he talked about his background, his mother, and it was really moving. And actually, the video, although he made the speech to only about sort of 30 or 40 people, the speech went out, and it was a very successful. It was a very successful YouTube video for him, and it was incredibly moving. And he's just been an enormously helpful person, and again, just another person who just doesn't take no for an answer, and he just is so passionate that Lucy is going to be exonerated. And again, just somebody who my life's been hugely enhanced getting to know, and I've met him on quite a number of occasions, and I really, really like him. He's just a wonderful person.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last group of people that I wanted to acknowledge were people who supported me in my book. Now, you already know about the people that I've interviewed. If we were to literally acknowledge everyone, this would just go on forever. So, I've cut for the purpose of this video, I'm not talking about people like Michelle and Martin, for example, who I'm really close with, and they're always there for me. But you've heard them be interviewed for many hours, so we're not discussing their contribution in this video as an example, but they're both fantastic people. Obviously, I interviewed many people and I got support from an enormous amount of people. I can't even begin to mention all of them, but I do just want to mention David Davis and John Ashton, who agreed to endorse the book. And people, I should also mention my publisher, Synto Press, and David and Helen from Synto Press, who took a chance on an author that I have been published previously, but it's my first major nonfiction work. And it's a controversial topic. And they backed me 100% in every way. And I've got to know them really well, and they're fantastic people. And I've just been really privileged to have their backing, firstly, and then the backing of David Davis, John Ashton, and Philip Hammond, who we mentioned earlier. So you couldn't have had a higher caliber of people to endorse the book. But I think, Jonathan, maybe you could talk more broadly about David Davis and John Ashton and their contribution.
Well, I think David Davis is quite exceptional. I know he's done miscarriages of justice before, but I mean, he is just like a dog with a bone. And I remember when he decided he was going to spend the parliamentary recess in 2024 researching Lucy Letby's case. And he clearly did a really, really good job. In fact, he couldn't get hold of the court transcript, so he went through all the sort of Cheshire local papers, and he got all his information from various different sources. And again, as with many of his other famous miscarriage of justice cases, once he made his decision that this was something he was going to support, he has been quite exceptional. And not just that he is very willing to talk to anybody and explain the situation, but to have got as many parliamentary debates in such a short time. In fact, he's had two in the space of just 3 months, and it's quite clear what you get. You get half an hour to make a speech, and in fact, and one of them, he just didn't want anyone to interrupt him or ask him questions because he just needed to get through all the information. But he clearly spends an enormous amount of time making sure that he gets the information across. But also, when he was challenged by Cheshire Police, again, his reaction, the way he's handled it, so professional. And again, miscarriages of justice are not sort of very sexy. They're not the you don't get much. You're basically dealing with a single person, although often the repercussions and the implications that occur after a miscarriage of justice can be absolutely profound. And clearly with this one, there's going to be enormous implications for both the criminal justice system and enormous implications for the NHS. But I just take my hat off to him. It's something I've now become very interested in, which I previously had just never thought about. Miscarriages of justice, they weren't on my radar at all. And much of that has been inspired by the work of David Davis. And again, somebody who now I just have the utmost respect for, and just think what an amazing way to spend your career, to have done that much for not just Lucy Letby, but Tom and other cases which he was hugely involved with, and just to have that compassion and fortitude and just determination to ensure that justice is achieved in all these different cases.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the last person I just wanted to mention was Kate Clancy, who firstly, there's a few things people may not know about Kate. She reviewed my book in Prospect magazine, but you may not know that she won the Orwell Prize for Political Writing, which is one of the most prestigious writing awards in the country. Also, you may not know that she was cancelled for doing something basically innocuous, and she was attacked, and they tried to take her out of publication, and thankfully a publisher stuck up for her. But she's been through quite a lot, so the last thing she needed to do was stick her head up on this. So I don't know her at all. It would have been completely inappropriate for me to communicate with her, given she's writing an article in my book, which I didn't know about. So I've not had any correspondence with Kate. I've not interacted with Kate at all. But I really respect her for speaking out, and I wanted to acknowledge that, particularly given the context of what she'd been through previously. So that's our list, Jonathan. We want to finish by saying a few things in conclusion. Firstly, we just couldn't mention everyone. I mean, there's so many people that have been important to me, and some of whom I consider friends, who I've not mentioned here. And it's just impossible. We've done 1.5 hours just on this small number of people. This is where we are today is is due to contributions from tens of thousands of people, and that leads into the second thing we want to say, which is that all contributions are important. Alexa, you can talk about that, Jonathan. That's something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I just want to close with a few things. I've made a nice list here. First thing is that you get it far more than I do, but the two biggest questions I get asked by different people is, how can I help Lucy? And are you in touch with Lucy? So the first thing to say is, how can I help Lucy? And it's very easy for individuals to think, gosh, there's so much going on, so many impressive people. But actually, just by supporting these channels, watching videos, making comments, some of the comments have been absolutely blown me away. Some of the insight that people have put into, it's quite clear that people really have researched all this, and just the level of interaction has just been absolutely fantastic. And just as we've said, just having a broad base of a large number of people who support Lucy is absolutely brilliant. I looked at some of the viewing figures, even for the 19 nurses. I mean, some of the 19 nurses videos have got over 80,000 people watching them. Some of the Phil Hammond ones have got over 250,000, and some of the mainstream documentaries have got several million people watching. So that level of support is really important, and just engaging, spending time is really, really essential. So that's what I'd like to say about that. And we so appreciate everything that everybody's doing, and we just can't thank you enough. And even to the fact that you've got to this far in the video is really important to me. The second thing is, am I in touch with Lucy? So I think we're Mark McDonald is very helpful at helping us, making sure we're doing the right thing here. We hear that Lucy does like to receive letters and correspondence, and she really appreciates that. You can write to Lucy. I wouldn't write to Mark McDonald or anybody else. You can write directly to Bronzefield Prison. The address for that is very easy to find on the website. It's probably, obviously you just put her name, but it's probably worth putting your address at the back. And write to her, because I think that's something that I feel very strongly about, because in the end, before she went into prison, she had a fairly small life. She lived in Hereford, and she had a small group of friends there. She's an only child. I don't know how big her family is. So the number of sort of pre-existing people who can support her, I don't know how big that is. Obviously, when she went to, her life changed, she went to Chester, but since all this has happened, most of the people in Chester have obviously not been able to support her. I don't know how many do now, but certainly straight after her conviction, very large numbers of people who were supporting her failed to do so. So if you want to write to Lucy, I would write to her. And some people say to me, well, I don't know what I'd say to her, but I don't think you can go wrong as long as you're compassionate and you just show her that you care, and you just encourage her. So do that. Write to her at Bronzefield, and just probably put your name on the envelope at the back. So the other thing I just wanted to talk about is what I now see my role as. At the very beginning, when there was no support for Lucy at all, I thought, well, I actually wrote to her original solicitor and said, look, I will support her in any way I can. And I'm hugely grateful that I don't need to support her at all now, because we've got world experts in every field looking after her. So I can be a campaigner, and I can just support her. So I feel very strongly that as a person, we need to never lose sight of what Lucy's everyday existence is, and try and make her understand that a lot is going on. So I send her if there's an encouraging article in the papers, I'll buy the paper and I'll cut it out and I'll send it to her. I sent her the book as early as possible, so she received it very at an early stage. You can again. There are some of the people at Bronzefield Prison who I've rung them, the prison, and got some advice. And there's some very nice people there who can advise you. Just got to be a little bit careful what you send. You can send books, but again, I think if you want to send her something, I would check with the prison whether it's appropriate, because certainly a lot of things you can't send her. But just support for Lucy as a person is absolutely critical. The other thing that for me is so vital, and is I'm an absolute crusader on, is the implications of this case to the NHS. Because what is the incentive for a highly motivated neonatal nurse now to do higher qualifications and become a very experienced NHS healthcare professional if somebody dies in your care and you could be charged with criminal negligence or murder, of course? And to me, that's one of the reasons why it's so absolutely essential that we do achieve justice for Lucy, and that never again, and we know, of course, now that this case was so badly handled and it should never have got anywhere near a courtroom. But I just want people to get the reassurance that you are protected as an NHS person and you will not face the consequences that Lucy's had to go through. And so that's something that I feel very, very strongly about. And the other thing that we've just said that I would, when the Thirlwell inquiry first came out, I just couldn't stand it. All I saw was things on the news where Lucy was being sort of, yet again, we were seeing Lucy being sort of torn apart by people, and people saying that she'd failed exams and she wasn't a good nurse and all this sort of thing. And I just thought, oh, I can't stand this. So I completely rebutted the Thirlwell inquiry. But since its since it closed in March 2025, it's been extraordinary how the report keeps being, there's been procrastination in the publication of the final report. And this is very, very interesting, because clearly Lady Thirlwell realizes that she cannot report with the original terms of reference. It's just now impossible. And so, as Chris knows, I've been very
he's written some, let me say he's written some very forceful letters to the Thirlwell inquiry.
So yes, I mean, I do feel, I mean, at the beginning I was really quite polite to Lady Thirlwell, but in my recent letter, I wrote to her about 3 weeks ago, and I just said to her, look, you cannot procrastinate any further. This inquiry has cost nearly £20 million, and you have got to, either you've got to get on and publish, or if you can't publish, which we don't think you can, you've got to explain why you can't publish, and that will be very helpful in achieving justice. And one of the things that really inspired me was that Chris said that a large proportion of the evidence that he used in his book had come directly from the Thirlwell inquiry. And I said this to Lady Thirlwell: if some of the strongest evidence of Lucy's innocence has come from your inquiry, then in many ways she should take some credit for that, because it is actually quite refreshing that a public inquiry which set out to do one thing has actually, because it's been properly conducted, has actually concluded the opposite. And I think she should take real credit for actually achieving that, but she should have the she should have the honesty to step forward and say, I cannot publish using the terms of reference as they stand.
Yes. Yeah, I can't really add anything to that. I just want us collectively to understand that I know the comments I often see that, oh, it's so slow, why is he still in prison, etc., etc. And I completely understand that. But we have progressed and traversed an enormous distance in a very short period of time, legally speaking, certainly. And, you know, we need to keep going, but we're allowed to pat ourselves on the back for what has been achieved already, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's the final thing I'd like to say. I think we've got to look at the last 2 years, and we should be very, very upbeat, because we have achieved the most extraordinary amount in such an incredibly short space of time. And it's been down to, there have been a few movers and shakers, but just the enormous volume of support that has been achieved and over that time is absolutely wonderful. And I just want to acknowledge the vital importance of the grassroots support that we've that has come with all this, and just to say that we appreciate it so much. Everybody who's been involved, watching these channels, commenting, and all your contributions are so appreciated and have made an enormous amount of difference. And I just heartfelt thanks to everybody for that. And I just want you to feel inspired to continue, because we've gone through the really difficult part. We've now got enormous momentum, and I just think that from now on we've got so much that we can achieve. And every week, I never cease to be surprised when new people step forward. Carol Black recently, I hadn't realised how incredibly eminent she was, but to have one of the most eminent criminal scientists this country's ever had stepping forward and commenting on Lucy was just extraordinary. And at that level, we've got some enormous big guns who keep coming forward, but also you were saying, Chris, that from all around the world you've been having people contact you and offering support. This week, a very eminent retired solicitor, through a good friend of mine, contacted me, and he's only very new to the case, but he's just spending hours and hours looking at every aspect and coming up with some really important stuff. So much is still to be achieved, and we've got the momentum, and we're moving forwards. And it is just, I just have this wonderful sort of, I'm just so positive that anything is now possible. And as you say, it has reinvigorated my faith in the human spirit, and I just, and I know you're exactly the same, that people put things into this campaign, but both you and I have got so much more out of it than you could possibly have put in, and met so many people, and it's changed our lives completely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great note on which to end. I hope that people have enjoyed listening to this. And again, I can only apologize if I didn't mention you, and I should have done. It just is impossible. But we could maybe do another one of these in the future where we have other unsung heroes that we haven't mentioned previously. I'm sure we could quite easily. I'm damn sure we could. But yeah, it was a great idea, Jonathan, and thanks for contacting me regarding this. And we'll maybe have you on a live stream soon as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks.